Do you guys remember the show about the adventures of babies and all the things that they would go through that were cool, curious, and mysterious all in one? Well, in today's discussion, Jax, Blade, and I will be talking about one of the most nostalgic shows that we remember from our childhood, and a personal favorite of mine that was probably my favorite show before I actually started watching Dragon Ball Z. And what is that show, Jax?
Rugrats. Rugrats.
Yes, and we're going to be having a lot of fun talking about Rugrats, all the things that we remember, our favorite characters, what we remember the most about the series, and just a bunch of random discussions all in one. So, Jax, why don't you start us off by telling everybody how you got into Rugrats?
Oh God, man, that show literally came out, I think the year I was born, like 1990.
I didn't even know it was that old.
Yeah, man, I remember it came out when I was freaking a youngin', and I remember watching that when I was like actually a Rugrat, and my parents, actually my sister, she would just like leave me in front of the TV, like when she was babysitting me on the nights when she had to stay home and do her homework while my parents would go out. I would just watch it on TV in like my little diapers and stuff like that, and just play with my Godzilla toys mimicking their Reptar things, and I thought it was so adorable and cute. I mean, well, I was an infant too, so it was kind of like I was part of it, and I would like implant myself into their stories, like, oh yeah, I'm part of the Rugrats too when I was a kid. And then like I started getting older and stopped watching it and kept watching it, and I just became so enamored with it. I love that show. There were so many scenes you can go back and really appreciate as an adult while watching it, because they had so many like jokes you can go back. I mean, like chocolate pudding. Why are you making chocolate pudding? Because I've lost control of my life. And it's just like everyone's been at that point where it's just like, what am I doing with myself? And then freaking grandpa watching those late night shows that he's not supposed to be watching. I got you guys Teletubbies, and I got us. I got for me Space Vixens. Well, that's when you guys.
Yeah, I remember that little like mermaid pornography. With those space, yeah, it was. I think it was like there were like these mermaids that went into outer space or something like that, and it was crazy because I didn't get those references as a kid, and I'll just say this real quick, Jordan, because I actually did like a PowerPoint presentation in college. And in it, I was talking about like a lot of these adult like references and jokes that we completely missed as kids. And that was one of them. Like he was watching that and I'm like, I didn't even get that reference when I was a kid, you know?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, any other things that you remember about getting into the show?
I just remember, well, back then, there were a lot of great Nicktoons. I mean, being in the 90s, that was like the prime time. I mean, not only were there great Nicktoons, there were just great Nick shows, like all that, and freaking Keen and Kel. And then this show was just fantastic. I mean, it was one of the longest lasting Nickelodeon shows, and we got to actually grow the character. Well, not in this, way. They kind of Pokemon'd us with their ages, because it was like, freaking Tommy stayed one, and then they like have more than, I want to say, they have more than 200 episodes, I want to believe. Well, if you do the little 15 minute, and I always thought it was just so funny that these babies would get into things like they act like us. They would act like older. They like the way they would look at things like, oh, this is chocolate spaghetti and it's freaking earthworms. I thought that was like just disgusting. But how about you?
Well, for me, I'm kind of similar to you in the sense that the way I watched it is, obviously, it came on Nickelodeon, and Jordan will tell you, for people who were born in the 90s, there was a big three. There were other stations, but the big three was Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Disney. Nothing competes with those three shows in terms of like things that kids watch growing up as kids.
And then there was also, I gotta say, like Fox Kids and Kids WB, but those were the like three titans. Those were the three titans right there.
Yeah, they were like the mini ones, but like the gods of like kids shows were like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, and Disney. And ironically, I didn't get Cartoon Network until later on. So I remember I was just like, randomly going through the show, and I was pretty young myself at the time, and I was just watching it with my grandma, ironically, and it was just funny because my grandma really liked it because she really liked watching like the older characters, because there was a lot of older characters, like the two grandpas and stuff. And I really liked the show because of, like, you know, the young kids. And it was just funny because I watched that show with my grandma for like completely different reasons. She liked watching the old characters, I liked watching like the younger characters, and that's pretty much how I got into it. It was just a random show and we were just flipping through, and I was always, you know, so like enamored by like these adventures that these babies would go through, and how like the parents were so oblivious to the fact that their kids are like completely cognizant of everything that's going around. But like, you know, apart from like how I actually got into Rugrats, the funny thing is, my favorite like memory or my most memorable moment of the Rugrats series would probably have to be the Dust Bunnies. Do you remember the Dust Bunnies?
Oh yeah, like if you like went under the carpet, the dust bunnies would take you down and eat you.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that episode. That no, Rugrats had a lot of episodes like that that like f with your head, like when you're a kid, because like you guys have to remember, like me and Quinn were like around the Rugrats age when we were watching the show, so it's like interesting to us because they would have episodes like, do you remember the one where Chucky like was scared of the monster under his bed and he was just like, "Hey, come on down here, I got candy," and it was just like it turned out to be a sweater at the end, but it was just like effing with people.
It was wrestling with his head. And I remember Chucky was like the most like timid character after all of them. So, I mean, I would have to say like the Dust Bunnies and all those scary elements would probably have to be like my most memorable like moment like watching the show. But I think nothing beats the Dust Bunnies. And I also like the fact that Lil and Phil, like their parent, yeah, like they made the mom to look very masculine, and they made the dad to look like he behaved very feminine. And I always found that weird. I never caught on to that when I was a kid, but like, you know, my grandma, you know, noticed it, and, you know, being around my parents, because my parents used to watch it with me sometimes too, we picked up on like that whole element they did. But what would you say is your most memorable moment?
Oh god, okay, there are so many most memorable moments, but like one of the biggest memorable moments I had, because like it happened to me and a friend, was like I got to spend the week with one of my friends once, and we thought, oh yeah, this is gonna be great, but like after like 3 days we just didn't like each other. And there was an episode where Tommy and Chucky were like spending the week together, and then like Tommy's just like, oh Chucky, in my house we do things like this all the time, and he's like, okay Tommy, and then like he's just doing all this stuff. Like Chucky has his own set of rules that he follows and he enjoys his life, and then like Tommy has his own set of rules that he follows in life, because that's what kids are like. That's what everyone's like. You have your own different set of rules. Like not everyone's house is the same. And so Phil and Lil pretty much give him the whole thing of like, yeah, you two may be best friends now, but after you live together, you're gonna start like hating each other. And it's just like, that is so accurate. And then I love the part where Chucky just snaps. He's like, but like Tommy goes up to Chucky and he says, but Chucky, at my house we do stuff like this all the time. My house, my house, my house. Let me tell you something, Tommy. This isn't my house. It's my house. And when you're in my house, you gotta do things my way. And then he just loses it. And it's so funny because it was like, I've seen that happened to me and my friend, because we were like fighting over freaking Transformers. So it's like, dude, at my house we always get to stay up and watch this stuff. Well, at my house we gotta go to bed this time. And I was just like, well, I don't want to be here. Well, fight you go home. Fine, I will. And then we just had this big argument, and then we got to a fight, and then we rekindled it after some cookies and stuff like that. But I always love that. And then the whole talk in the bed was so relatable. It's like, hey Chucky, I'm really glad we're friends. Yeah, me too, Tommy. Hey Chucky, I really want to know this. Hey, yeah, that's great, Tommy. Hey Chucky, what? Tommy, what? I'm trying to sleep. He's like, I want to know about green Jello. Green Jello? What are you talking about? And he's just like, how do they do it? Do what? Make it green? I don't know. Just go to sleep. Yeah, it's one of those things where you think about and it's like, oh my god, that is so funny because it's so relatable. Like you always have, like if you've ever been at a sleepover, you always have that one friend who just wants to keep talking and talking and talking, and you're just like, all right dude, I just want to go to sleep. All right, yeah. But
Dude, it's just so funny you're saying that, because when you said Jello, I actually remember like when, I think it was when Tommy's parents moved in, like all of the neighbors wanted to like give him Jello and stuff. I remember that. That was crazy.
oh yeah, they did, they all had those different Jello shapes.
I remember when they were moving in. It was really cool. And like, you know, to go into more of like, you know, characters, because we were just talking about Chucky, who would you say is your favorite Rugrats character and why?
Oh damn. Okay, well honestly I'll say this. when it comes to favorite Rugrats character wise, I gotta go with like, because before they got the new ones, I mean, like they're always like side characters who aren't really Rugrats, but you kind of consider them Rugrats, like like Susie Carmichael or that redhead kid. I forget that redhead kid's name, but and then
The mean one, right?
no, not the mean one. Oh yeah, not the one that Angelica was flirting with. Oh yeah, that was like a McNulty. It was like what was his name? Is McNulty? It's like because they had the baby wars. They had the baby wars versus each other. But Angelica. If you also, for everyone who's watching this right now, go look up the Rugrats comic books. Like I'll post a few on my Twitter if you want to follow Jack's Blade Fitness, where you can check them out. And they are just okay, yeah, these are hilarious. Like they are like the writing in them is so good. But I would say my favorite character and is Chucky. And sadly, the voice actress for Chucky passed away like last year. But I really love Chucky. I just love the way he acted. Like there were so many episodes where he would just spaz out over stuff. Like you remember his snail? It was like Melville. No, it wasn't. It was a pill bug. It was like oh, this is my boy Melville. And then Tommy and Chucky and Tommy and Phil and Lil are always like, how do we tell him his bug's dead? And he was like, Chucky, your bug's dead. He's like, what? No, he's alive. He's alive, I tell you. And he's like, I know it really is. I love the part. He's just like, look, we got you a new bug, Chucky. No, this isn't even a bug. It's a snail. And he throws it away. And I was just like, oh my God. That is like you just said, it was a very deep concept for the kids to understand like death. And then the whole thing with Chucky's past is pretty heartbreaking. Like
Yeah, how his mom passed away and all that stuff. I mean, that was crazy to me, dude. And like the scary thing about it all, Jordan, is like when you look at like Rugrats, like there were so many messages. Like and you remember, guys, we're looking at this as kids who grew up in the 90s, but like now that we're looking back on it, like we remember like so many of these things from an adult mindset that makes the show even better than it was back then, because we didn't even pick up on these things. And the funniest thing about it is what I remember the most about like Rugrats, and this was the funny scene, is how like the babies would interact with like like other people who were like outside of their circles. Like they would always have like a different baby who was like like the bully. Like because I remember there was that one bully, I can't remember his name, but like they pushed him into like, what's up?
Oh, the swing bully.
Yes, and
was it the swing bully? The one who was like, oh, I'm not gonna freaking, oh, don't worry, I'm not gonna jump over you. I'm gonna jump on you.
And then they pushed him into like the sand with like all those red ants, and they started biting his.
No, that was Angelica, because she was like, those are my babies to push around, and then she like came out, so that was like, Angelica was like the Godzilla to that Gamera monster. It was like, Angelica, you really do care. He was like, whatever, you diaper babies, I like you guys.
There was such a love-hate relationship, but I mean, to say my favorite character, Jordan, I'd probably have to go with, I mean, I would probably have to say Tommy, and I know that's a very like.
No, Tommy was very likable. So
I know it's a generic answer, but like the reason I like Tommy was because he was so brave, and he was like younger than the other babies, because like Lil and Phil were like 1.5 years, Chucky was 2, Angelica was 3, and it's like Tommy's like was the youngest before obviously what was his name, Dill came around. And I just liked how brave he was, man. And I remember when Dill was first introduced into like that movie, you remember?
Yeah, the Rugrats movie when he first came about. And then they were like, what was cool about this series, people, is they actually were leading up to it when you watch the TV show, because there was a episode where Tommy and Tommy's mom and their Tommy's dad, Stu and Dee Dee Pickles, like they went on this trip, and then she was like being sick. She's like, honey, I'm pregnant. And it was like, oh snap, she's pregnant. And then like we started seeing these trailers for the Rugrats movie, and they were like the most hyped trailers ever. Like it was the babies coming out the TV screen in a Reptar wagon. They were like, hold on to your diapers, babies. And then Chucky's like, I don't think I can deal with this guy, and he's like hanging on by the tail. And it was just like leading up to it. It was so exciting, like got you so hyped for it. And I was just really looking forward to that movie. And then the movie came out, and then it still holds up. I mean, there are some parts in it you kind of go, it's 90s stuff, but hey, it was good. Like the soundtrack for it, I still have the soundtrack.
Yeah, I remember when that first came out, like that was like amazing. And to go on to like our next two segments real quick, Jordan, what would you say about Rugrats in terms of its ability to hold up today? Because personally, I saw a few episodes, before we recorded this, and I actually think it holds up pretty well. Not like the animation wise, but because of like the motives and the stories that they were trying to teach. I think if it wasn't, what made Rugrats so great was all the stories and the lessons that they taught people, and like how silly babies can be, and the creativity that they went through.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like, well, I'll say this for people who grew up with the series, there are certain episodes of Rugrats that particularly hold up. Like, I would say the first few seasons, while they like look kind of weird, they hold up, like, because they have a bunch of funny stories and like whole many misunderstandings that babies would think of, like the hiccups, like you have to be scared of, like, oh, I'm gonna go get the booger man, like the way they pronounce words is just funny, like, oh no, the booger man's gonna get you. Oh yeah, I watched this movie King Krong and they pushed him off the Empire State Building, and I was just like, it was just funny to hear them, these freaking babies, say that. And then if you rewatch those first few seasons, I would say seasons 1 to 4 before the movie came out, those still hold up tremendously in my honest opinion. But then like later on, after they added Dill, is it's kind of like if you're a nostalgic move, it'll hold up, but not as well in my opinion. And then like after they got Kimmy,
Don't say it, don't, Jordan. We're gonna save it for the random section. The next series.
okay. I got you. All right, fine.
So we both pretty much agree then that that Rugrats holds up pretty well in terms of its concepts. I do agree with the later episodes, which takes us to our final part of our segment where we always talk about our random ideas and our random things. Now, I have, two things I want to mention real quick. Number one, it's pretty evident looking at it from an older perspective that the parents were terrible. I mean, they were so unaware of what their children were going through. Like, I can't believe parents could be so bad. I mean, and I love the show, but I think that was kind of like the running gag, how horrible the parents were, how they were so unaware of what their kids were. They weren't aware they could talk, and Chucky's dad thought he could only say no. That's one thing. And the second thing I wanted to talk about is I personally was never really a fan of Rugrats All Grown Up, and my reasoning for this is I felt that it took away from what the show was supposed to be, because what made Rugrats so awesome is that they're a bunch of babies and toddlers that are basically going through all of these adventures, and that's what made it fun. That's what made the show what it was. When you grow up those characters, it takes away from the fun of the show, because now it's like a teenage soap opera, whereas it was like these babies who are going through these things and being so creative with their thoughts.
We already had As Told by Ginger, so like we didn't need All Grown Up.
Exactly, man. So like, what do you say about those two things, and what are other things you'd like to add to our random things you've noticed about the series?
Well, yeah, like what you said, it makes so much sense about the parents being bad. Like that is so true. Like realistically, as an adult watching this, I'm kind of horrified, because like I think about like if I had a child and they just wandered off, I'd be like searching the entire town, like freaking out. I wouldn't be just like, oh, they ran off again, where could they be? I'd be like, no, where the hell are my kids? Where the hell? I would always want to know where my kids are 100% of the time. Like they could be killed or kidnapped, or so freaking easy. So I always thought I agree with you on that part. That was like really effed up when you could watch it as an adult. And then All Grown Up, I mean, the whole thing when they added Kimmy like to the show, like Rugrats. I mean, no offense to Kimmy, I know a lot of people like her, and she was like a pretty likable character on her own. But like the series itself just kind of went downhill after that, and then they did the All Grown Up. Now I'll say this: the All Growed Up movie, like the way they said it, like a baby, like all growed up, like GROWED. That was pretty entertaining to see, because like we had never seen it before, and it was like a good one shot thing. But then just seeing All Grown Up, an actual series on it, I completely agree. We already had As Told by Ginger, which goes along with our freaking title, so that's cool. But the show, like, we already saw these preteen drama things. So like, oh, Lil kind of had a crush on Tommy, and Kimmy and Tommy actually had a thing for each other. So it's just like, I mean, it's interesting, but I'm not really into it as much. And then like they teamed up with the Wild Thornberrys for a movie, and that was fun. Like looking back at it, is kind of it's writing wise it doesn't hold up, but it's just fun for a nostalgic blast. But those are my.
All right, so I mean, is there anything else you'd like to add before we put our final touches on this video?
Oh yeah, freaking chocolate spaghetti is nasty, guys. Like, don't eat it unless it's cooked. I mean, you got to be another country for that.
Definitely, man. So with that said, that's pretty much been our discussion on Rugrats. I mean, I had a lot of fun watching the show, and the conversation doesn't end here, guys, because there's a comment section where, Jordan and I are going to be going around and responding to people and hearing your thoughts, because I'm sure many of you guys grew up with Rugrats too. I just want to put my final touch in saying I thought the show was awesome. I didn't know what Kwanzaa or Hanukkah was until I watched Rugrats. Like, the show educated me on a lot of things I didn't learn until I advanced in school. And it was just incredible how many different cultures they brought in. The writing was just so rich. It was simple, but it was rich and easy to understand. And it's even good to watch these things as adults because you see all of those adult references, as grown-ups. So I love the show, didn't really like All Grown Up, and didn't have an interest because it nullified what the show was. But that's my take. Jordan, your final take?
My final take is the show is one of the greatest Nicktoons of all time. If you ever wonder why is Nicktoon so bad, just go back to the old days and check out some 90s classicness, which is Rugrats. So it's definitely worth the watch. You can get all the series on DVD right now. They actually have a complete series box set you can get. And you can also just get volumes of your favorite ones if you don't want to get the entire series. And it's a great, enjoyable show that you can really appreciate as an adult. And I highly suggest it for anyone, viewers young and old, to go back and check it out.
All right, so with that said, I hope you guys liked our podcast, and please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys, and please watch our other first 2 podcast episodes in Dragon Ball Z and Teen Titans.
Yep, guys, and keep calm and booyah on, and don't forget, Momentai.